Welcome to Changing the Game, where bold leaders, rule breakers, and trailblazers drop the playbook and share how they lead, win, and shake things up. All right, welcome back to the show. Today I'm joined by Klein. Alex is a former Division I basketball player who took her athletic talents from college to playing professional basketball overseas, and eventually to the Olympic world through bobsled. While playing professionally, she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, which completely reshaped how she approached sport, her body, and life. Today, she's the founder of Group of Grit, a community built to support girls and women navigating autoimmune conditions through community resources and mentorship. And I'm so excited to have her here. Welcome, Alex.
Yay, thanks for having me, Jordan.
I'm so excited to have you here. I think your story is so cool. Your why is so powerful, and I'm pumped to get
Thank
into
you.
it. I like to take it back to the beginning of my guest journey because I do think laying the foundation is really powerful for who you've become now. So you played 4 sports in high school, and then you went on to play basketball at Bryant. How did basketball or these early competitive years in other sports really shape you?
I mean, I think as we know in the women's sports world and in general, that women who play sports become women who lead. And so I always thank my mom to this day for just throwing me in as many things as she could when I was younger. And I always just wanted to naturally get into as much as I could and like just soak in as much sport as I could. I loved it. I mean, I even remember like recess when I was really young, I'd be out playing soccer with the boys and playing tag, and that was just what I always wanted to do. But I think by my mom doing that and then having that early onset of like developing that love for sport, I mean, it definitely had a big reason into why I chose to continue pursuing it later on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think right away you mentioned something really interesting. Women who play sport become women who lead. Like there's that
Mhm.
stat that's like 94% of executive female leaders played sport or consider themselves
Exactly.
an athlete. I think that's so
Yeah.
cool. What do you think? I'm just curious on what you think. Like, why do you think sports lays such a great foundation for leadership in women in particular?
Yeah, it's funny because even like thinking through this conversation with you and we've just started, it's just thinking about I have no idea who I would be without that element to my personality and what characteristics I may not have and what may be lacking, what maybe was amplified because of sport. And it's really interesting to think because it just shapes so much of who we are. And um, even going into like the story about being on the Olympic pursuit, and then if something doesn't like work out or happen for an athlete, then what are you without that piece of your identity? And I think it's getting really deep really quick, but I think it's an important layer that needs to be talked about by men or women who pursue sport, because should you get injured or should you get sick or have a diagnosis or something happens, you know do you know who you are without that part of your identity?
Yeah, no, I think it's great that we're taking it deep really quickly here because I think that's so
Sorry.
important. Like so much of this show, like the reason this show exists, honestly, Alex, is because I'm a former athlete. All of my guests have been either former athletes or veterans. Like they've been through this transition out of uniform where you actually have to like stare it in the face and say, like, who
Yeah,
am I without this piece of my life? And it's a really
100%.
difficult transition for a lot of people. And you've gone through a lot of identity shifts in your life. I mean,
Yes, I have. I'm sure we'll get into that.
we'll get into that. Yes, let's just get right into it then. I actually want to know, you played college basketball, D1 basketball. What was your transition like out then? Because you went on to play overseas, but did you know right away that you were going to go play professionally?
I didn't know that I wanted to. Honestly, I was in the locker room, and this is during the March Madness time. I mean, there's that period where you can't be in touch with scouts or other teams that are looking to recruit or anything, right? I don't remember that specific set of dates, but they could only send you letters. And so I remember going to the locker room and there were letters in my locker. And that was when it kind of hit like, oh my gosh, first of all, who is this from? Second of all, is this actually something I could look into pursuing? So I really kind of just, I'm one of those people that follow my heart a little bit more than follow my brain at times. I'll be real with you. So I just kind of ran with it and took it for what I reached out to one of the German agents who had left a letter or sent a letter. And from there, she helped connect me to the team I played in Luxembourg.
That's awesome. And I actually love that you said I followed my heart over my brain. I think like your
Yeah,
early 20s are the perfect time to do just that and figure it out.
exactly. I mean, people might not agree with me, but that's just the path that I always choose. Follow your heart, trust your gut.
Yes, trust your gut. Like, honestly, I think sometimes the brain gets in the way of some of those decisions that could lead you to some really cool
Yeah.
things. Like, of course, you want to make some decisions, especially if your appetite for risk isn't as high, but like in your 20s, your appetite for risk is super high. Like you can always go back and work a regular job, but
Yeah.
how often is the opportunity going to present itself to play overseas?
That was my mentality, is just go with it as long as far as I can or feel good doing so. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
Until adversity hit.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, adversity hit. Tell me about that time. What was that like?
I remember being in my little apartment, and typically the foreign players from North America, at least in this league and this team I was playing in, they live together and you have a car and all this stuff. But at this time, I was the only fully paid professional player for this team. And so, with all that said, I was alone in my apartment. I just woke up one day, like there was no buildup. There was no, oh, maybe symptoms were slowly becoming onset. There was none of that. It was just like you walked into a wall and got smacked in the face. You started feeling all the symptoms, which include, I mean, the pain. It was worse than any like food poisoning or anything like that you may have experienced. The fatigue was really, really immense. I felt feverish symptoms, um, flu like flu like symptoms, but very heightened. And there was a lot of blood when I went to the bathroom, along with urgency to have to go all the time. And so something just wasn't, especially as an athlete, people say, we know our bodies really well. It's
Yeah.
definitely true. And I knew something was off.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. I couldn't imagine the panic that probably would have set in. Or just like the sheer like what is happening? Like my body is betraying me. I mean, as an athlete, you're so tuned into your body, like you said. And I just couldn't imagine how scary that probably was like.
I think for a long time, and we'll probably hit this later in our conversation, but women's pain has been normalized or minimized. And so we are conditioned in society to suppress a lot of emotions or things that we're feeling, and especially when something's invisible. So it's not like, when you're injured, you can blatantly see it on that person. It's, I had an invisible illness and didn't yet know it. So you kind of just start going day by day and trying to pretend that everything's okay. And vast majority of people with autoimmune, they do this, right? So um, unfortunately, that's reality, but that's what I'm here to move and I mean destigmatize. And with Group of Grit, we're getting closer and closer to doing that.
Yes. I absolutely love it. I can't wait to get more into what you're doing with Group of Grit, but I kind of want to stay on this topic a little bit more because you said that it's an invisible illness and women are often dismissed in this area. I think medicine for women does have a long way to go, and granted that's not my expertise on this show, but it's just my opinion.
Hmm.
And but I want to hear about how are you able to even get the resources to be diagnosed, because I think a lot of people don't even have that opportunity or don't know where to start. So what was
Hmm.
that process like for you?
I ended up going back to Canada mid-season, which I was really sad about, and it was very unfortunate because I started out really strong in the season. Um, and then I have something on my website, my socials for Group of Grit. It's like a video of me saying, you have 1,000 problems when you have your health in check, but when you don't have your health in check, you only have one problem. And so that became the case, and went back to Canada. Ended up, my family physician referred me to a specialist, thankfully. And I ended up, it took me under a year, about 8 months to be diagnosed officially. But that's the other thing with autoimmune, is there's such a long wait process. It can be anywhere from 1 to 4, 4.5 years ranging to be diagnosed. And it can also show as, sometimes not for myself, but in a pair, or there could be a trio of autoimmune diseases that you're, unfortunately, they decide to come in pairs or trios also. So for some people, it just, that the waiting period is so long. So for me, 8 months felt so long, but I can only imagine, what other people go through. And then I ended up getting colonoscopy. And from there, that's really the only way for sure via scope that they're able to confirm for sure you have what I have, ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease.
Yeah. Yeah. So much goes into that process. I'm glad that I'm happy that it didn't take you as long as it takes others, but like 8 months still
Yeah.
seems probably felt like a lifetime.
It does. And I mean, the symptoms are immensely, immensely uncomfortable. There's also, I should mention, I feel it's important to say this anxiety that's created around these illnesses, not just because they're invisible, but I mean, to leave the house when you constantly feel like you need to run to the bathroom, when you're constantly like every time you feel you have to go to the bathroom, it's just straight blood. Um, the pain that you kind of try to override, but really you're really struggling behind the scenes. So it from a like navigating society standpoint, it's also creating that mental health stuff around it too. It's all under the same umbrella to you feel not, and I don't want to say inauthentic, but you almost feel like you have to put on a mask to go out in public when you're really struggling through that stuff. So that in itself is a battle too.
100%. How did that change your relationship then with sport or your own body? Because I mean, you left mid-season, so did you think like this is it for me? Like I can't compete anymore? What was going through your head?
I did think, I mean, it pained me because basketball is my one sport love. I have it in my heart. It's what's in my blood. But it became a swap of priorities, right? So they always say, like we just talked about, it's not a problem until it's a problem. But then when it's a problem, nothing else matters. You can't be a good athlete, friend, partner, mom, anything without having your health first. So when I came back to Canada and was in that waiting period of diagnosis and then being diagnosed, it became this desire and this fire of building muscle and being strong on the inside and on the out. Before, I think there wasn't really this understanding or yearning to educate myself on strength. Like you weight lift in basketball, we were in the gym lifting weights, but not I didn't really grasp the importance of being strong inside mentally and then also with the physical. So that also was a pro, which we'll get into. But with bobsled, when I transitioned, that was a big like part and factor of the sport, which at the time I wanted to really heal myself in all ways and be the strongest version of myself while managing something invisible. So this sport was appealing to me at the time because it kind of allowed me to really focus on that strength aspect.
Yeah. How did the opportunity to compete in bobsled present itself then?
I don't believe in coincidence, but I believe the coincidence is the universe's way of remaining anonymous. But I did end up meeting the physical therapist for the Team Canada bobsleigh. I've always, when I was kind of figuring out my health and trying to rebuild it, I always wanted to work in the sport, athletic wellness kind of area as like a side, like my passion and my heart. It might not have been in my full-time job at the time, but I always wanted to keep that alive. And so I found a kickboxing studio for women locally, and one of the owners was the physical therapist I just mentioned. She suggested I go to a testing camp for late entry sports, which included sliding sports and bobsleighs under that umbrella. So I ended up going and started to train, like really move some weights and made the World Cup team.
That is so awesome. Like I love that it's called actually before our first conversation didn't know that bobsled was called like a late entry sport. I actually had never heard that term.
Hmm.
So I kind of want to know, I guess, why does I mean there's no college bobsleigh in the US, I guess. So like how is it a late entry sport? Like how do they recruit? Is it just like, hey, you should go try out? Or how does one land on the Canadian bobsleigh team?
Yeah, I think it's different nation to nation. I know in Canada they have a really great program that wasn't the method I went through, but this is a really well-known program across Canada, and it's called RBC Training Ground. So if there are any younger athletes who are in university and still maybe want to look into a late entry sport or pursuing sport maybe in a different realm than they have experience with, getting to be a part of RBC training program is something I thought always was really cool. And they test you on different categories. So I think there's like strength, speed, agility, things like that. And based on your results, what sport they think you could excel at.
Oh,
So I
cool.
think that's a really, really cool program that exists in Canada. And I don't know how they do it in the US, but it just seems to be that a lot of bobsledders do come from the athletics world. So they come from the sprint background, or the men, they come from football or rugby, very explosive, powerful sports. So very different from basketball. And I had to really work at training, basically taking myself apart and rewiring myself together to try to be a bobsledder.
Yeah, you mentioned the weights being a big key factor in that, like lifting
Mhm.
more and becoming healthy from the inside out. What was another big jump for you, or what translated more seamlessly?
I think the biggest struggle, or the thing that I miss the most, I would say 100% at the top of my list would be, and people wouldn't really think this, but the team sport
Yeah.
versus not a team sport. That's new for me. So being in a team, that is very natural for me. I really, really thrive on that environment. Even like when you're playing ball and, the point guard gives you an over the top and it's a sick pass and then you get a quick 2 points. Like, I mean, that dynamic, that high five, all that within it doesn't exist in the same at all to bobsleigh. It
Yeah.
really truly is two individuals coming together for a common goal. And yes, there's two-person bobsleigh or four-person bobsleigh for the men. Women don't have four women. It is, in my eyes, at least from my perspective, separate individuals coming together. Um, so that's what I would say was my biggest miss. That's what my heart missed doing bobsleigh. Um, but you know what? At the same time, I do think it's challenging you, right? It's pushing you. It maybe I've done team sport all my life, and now it's just another challenge. So that's the type of personality I have. And just because you're not used to it, you didn't come from that background, doesn't mean that you should take it on.
Yeah. I love that. It's just different perspectives. How did you know then when you found your teammate? Because you were in doubles, right? Or two person.
hmm
So how did you
hmm
know when you found like your teammate that you worked really well with, or were you just paired up and it's like you two have to figure it out?
I will say again, it's based on the nation. Um,
Okay.
each country and team kind of functions differently. What I mean by that is, like, sometimes for a nation, the coaches pair people together, or sometimes the pilot, the driver, has more of a say. The culture of the sport is that it's pilot oriented, so they are kind of seen as the most important member. I want to say take this with a grain of salt, but most important member of the team. They have two disciplines, so women compete in a monobob or two women. Monobob is just the pilot going down, and two women, obviously the brake woman's in the back to push. So they have two disciplines to qualify for the Olympic Games in, whereas being a brake woman, you only have one. So there's kind of two components that make up a brake woman. There is the speed and what time you're pushing. And there's also the weight aspect. So because I'm 6'1", I was the tallest female bobsledder in the world at the World Cup level. And with that, I'm lean, but I am naturally heavier because I'm a head taller than majority of other push athletes in the world. So I had to look for a lighter or smaller pilot in order for our weights to complement one another. So the weight of the sled with the athletes and our gear has to be under a certain number. You want to be as close to that number as possible, but you can't be any over it because you're going to get DQ'd even for the slightest little bit. So even at the bottom, you get weighed. There's two runs in a race. You get weighed after the first run. And even if there's a little bit of snow in the sled from braking, you have to clear all that out. They have brushes and things down there because when you put it all on the scale, you don't want to be over that number. So there's a lot of layers to the sport and things that people don't see in that minute they watch you go down in the sled. That's like 1% of the sport itself. You just don't see what else is going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of equipment maintenance, a lot of labor intensive activity in order to keep the sleds and the equipment running optimally. So it wasn't really the easiest for me to find a partner that I fit in without having to lose a lot of weight. So that was tough
Right.
because it was a power sport, but I had to stay lean and or stay really really skinny, but continue building, trying to build strength, and then managing an autoimmune disease on top of that. So lots going on.
Yeah, lots going on. And I had no idea the sport was like that. I mean, you're right. We only see that little sliver of you going fast down the track, and like that's about it. And so I feel like
Exactly.
maybe it's because I've talked to some other bobsledders recently, and I feel like the sport is growing. But I mean, do you think awareness around the sport is getting, I guess, more obvious, or does it still have a lot of work to do?
I think that there's still a lot of work to do. I still think that, I mean, it's different in Europe. So if you ask the teams in Europe, Germany, for example, they're always the dang best nation. And then the Swiss are right there too. But they train their athletes earlier. They get them in it at a far younger age than we do in North America. Um, their athletes make a lot of money. You get big sponsors out there. That's non-existent here. So from that standpoint, I think North America, there's a lot of work to do. It all comes down to money, resources. But the one thing I do view it extremely as a sexist sport still. One, because the weight aspect, but I mean the disciplines to compete and qualify for the Olympics is different. Like they have 4-man versus we have 2 women. So
Right.
there's literally double the number of spots for a man to be an Olympic athlete in this sport compared to a woman. And so the argument was, why do men get these two disciplines to compete in? Women only have 2 women. So they created monobob. So now the pilots have this other discipline that they can qualify in, but it doesn't do anything for the brake woman. So unless
Right.
you're the pushing brake woman or the spare, you always have to have an alternate there in case injury happens and the main pusher can no longer compete. You know, you got 1.5 spots for us compared to the bunch of men. So I don't love that. And the weight component, I mean, if you saw some of these guys in real life, they're huge and so strong and so fast and this and this and this. Get as big as fast as you can. But for the women, you know, I was very out of place. I did not look like the typical bobsledder. I had to violently cut weight and
Wow.
to maintain that for 6 months. That's the even harder part. It's not just
Yeah.
get to this number, but perform, but also still be light. And so they don't care about that autoimmune stuff going on, which is fair. I get it. It's a business. You got results, you got podiums to get to. Like, I understand all that. I'm speaking the same language, but I think the women's weight is not like equivalent to what the men's is. They have more room to kind
Yeah.
of get big and fast.
Totally. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And yeah, what you're saying makes complete sense, especially adding the layer in of having an autoimmune disease. It's like, okay, so you're asking me to put my body under more stress. And it's like, great. Yeah, like you said, I get it. You have podiums to get to, but it's just like, man, when the other side of the aisle doesn't have to worry about any of this, it's a
Hmm.
little bit interesting that
That's where
dynamic.
I'm at. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. It's not the same for the guys.
It's like almost it's a totally different sport at that point.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yes, it is.
Do you see those rules changing for the women at all as the sport grows?
I don't, and I'm an optimist. I will say, now there are athletes. There was there's a few athletes from various nations who did petition against it, and they did bring it to the board of the sport and try to get that moved. It was unsuccessful. Who's to say that in the future, it could happen again? Maybe things will be changed, but there's also differences like in Europe, I don't know why, but their pilots tend to be a little smaller. The pilots in North America tend to be a little bit bigger. So it's more so the North American pilots that or athletes that would be unhappy with that number. I don't know why, but the pilots over there, Australia, Europe, they're a little bit lighter, so they don't have the same struggles that we do. So who knows why? There are pilots that have to put weight in the sled. So you
Wow.
can't make everyone happy, but for me, being tall, I knew this was going to be something going into the sport. I wasn't oblivious to it. I did know it was a weight oriented sport. I think just having the autoimmune stuff on top of it was just a whole other beast that you have to hide while you're trying to get to the games. And people just don't have the capacity, even if they knew, right? Like they're so in on their own world. It's so cutthroat anyway. Everyone's worried about their one little measly spot to try to claim, that people
Yeah.
don't have the capacity to care for what you're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, it's like a harsh reality of sports sometimes is
Hmm.
it's like it doesn't stop because of one thing in your life.
Yeah.
And that's like for
Yeah.
everyone, which is like, oh man, it's ruthless, but it's also kind of the beauty of sport too. Sometimes like it's
Hmm.
just tries to treat
And I
everyone
know that
the same.
100%. I mean, I have no regrets. I have no regrets for many reasons, but uh, just learning how to lift weight and move weight and train completely differently than how I knew from basketball. That was like really building on that resilience and building on that strength I wanted to inside it out. That was the whole goal of bobsled.
Yeah.
And so we were successful with that.
That's amazing. What's your favorite memory from competing in bobsled?
I think competing at world championships, because that is the equivalent to the Olympic Games in a non-Olympic year.
Mm,
So to say I competed at the world champs, and also I was a two woman champion for North America in the two woman discipline. So that that is something I'm proud of.
I love that. No, that's amazing. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
It's honestly incredibly badass. So your journey has been
Thanks.
it's been so cool, and I want to pivot a little bit, or not even pivot. I just want to talk about Group of Grit because this is such a.
Yay.
I mean, it's your why. It's like you have. It's
Yeah.
so compelling. So I just want to learn a little bit more about why you decided to found Group of Grit, or like when did the idea come on to you?
It actually came to me, the name came to me in 2020. And I don't know why or where, I just wrote it down on my little whiteboard. And I don't know what it was going to be. I didn't know what kind of program it was going to be, but it just came to my head. And so I actually, looking back, this is really odd. It's funny. I registered it as a sole proprietorship in Canada. So that's the business structure I have. And by no means was it a business at that point. Like, this is not anything that was reality. I just secured that name. And for whatever reason, you know, synchronicity, that's what I did. And then was on this pursuit to the Olympics. So I was like, oh, how can these kind of coexist with one another? And it definitely became Group of Grit. Was like, it's bigger than sport. You hear athletes say it, but it's really, really true. It was bigger. It was bigger than just me and getting to the games. It was always how can I help other girls and women who are going through this crap, who are going through invisible battles, to feel that they have a place to go to and that they're safe, to know, you're not the only one going through this. So I decided to, this past September 2025, get the name out there officially, launch Group of Grit with what I had. And then now 2026, we have a lot more in store, which is really exciting. But I mean, weekly we have more and more girls coming, and it's so validating whenever I get a message. Like, there was a girl who has MS and she's 22 and she just
Oh
got
my God.
diagnosed in Canada, and she sent me this long note. And just knowing, like, naturally these people are gravitating to the brand and to what Group of Grit is growing into being, that's just like, that's so much more meaningful than, um not to say obviously the Olympic pursuit. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say. It's
Yes, totally.
to help other, to give back and pour back into what I needed when I was diagnosed. And I mean, there's girls going through it when they're age 10, younger than that, when they're teens. Like, where do they go when they're, one, waiting diagnosis, but two, then when they're diagnosed, okay, you're given the clinical stuff. Here, Jordan, you're gonna feel XYZ, be on your way. Good luck. What do you do with that? Right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that was always the big why. And it's working. We're growing.
Yeah. Alex, I know I love it. I think it's so cool that one of the reasons why I love talking to founders is because you were able to have an experience and see that there were things missing. Like, oh, there were
Mhm.
resources that I wish I would have had when I was going through
Yeah.
this, or how can I make sure no one ever feels the same way that I felt at this point again? And instead of just thinking about like, oh, somebody should do something about that, like you go out and create it. It's a
Mhm.
different mindset, just being able to be like, no, I'm going to take action on this. And um I'm assuming like when you started, like it was like that lack of community, right? Like that's what you were
Yeah.
experiencing.
There was nothing more than a Facebook group. There are very important resources out there that exist across US and Canada, which are very important and life-saving resources and organizations. But I felt there was a big gap in, like you said, the community element, feeling like, the branding even for Group of Grit, like there's an uplifting element to it. There's still the capacity. There's a lot of people going through, it's very individualized, of course, through different things, but a lot of people battling this stuff, you can still lead a fulfilling life. You can still have goals for yourself. You can still do all of these things. It's just going to look a little bit different, and you're just going to maybe need like that, that I want to say older sister, but that helping hand through it all, that guidance and that feeling of safety that you're not the only one going through these hardships. So the community element is something I've implemented, but I want it to be even more enhanced going forward. So that's something even more that's going to be developed this year in 2026 too.
Yeah. What are you most excited about then for this upcoming year?
My next launch is March 3rd. So we're one day under a month from the next launch, which I'll share with you is a mentorship program. And there's two different pathways. So the one will be for girls 10 to 17, and their primary caretaker or caretakers would be involved in that process, just like your older sister holding your hand through it. I view that as it's like when you're an athlete, you would understand you have your nutrition, you got your therapist, you got your coaches, you got your strength program, you have that umbrella. Here's you, Jordan, and then there's like that umbrella of a team underneath supporting you.
Yep.
That's the same thing with somebody who's diagnosed with their doctors and everything else, that Eastern, Western medicine, whatever you believe in, whatever you want to implement, but then you have Group of Grit there right by your side, being that community and that resource mentorship while you're going through it too. So that's the first path. The other is for women, young women 18 plus. So I'm bringing to life the mentorship aspect with that, the community elements. I hope to decide. I've been looking into different platforms, but find a platform officially that I can have women in a safe setting collaborate amongst each other. This includes moms who are having their daughters diagnosed, and they want to chat to like-minded women like themselves on how to best show up and support their daughter going through this. So
Yeah.
that's really important to something I want to launch officially this year, and then some other stuff coming later 2026.
I'm so excited for this new chapter for Grit. I mean, it's
Thank
really
you.
cool what you're building. And
Thank
in
you.
our previous conversation, you had mentioned that 80% of autoimmune diseases affect women. I think that's the stat.
Yes.
Why do you think support spaces haven't reflected that? Or why do you think in general, like why is it women that are almost solely affected by autoimmune
Hmm.
conditions?
Hmm. I think we did hit on it earlier. I'll just say it really quickly and then carry on and answering your question. It's like women's pain has been minimized and normalized, and that I would say support spaces have historically been designed without listening to women's lived experiences, especially younger girls and women who are navigating diagnosis alongside identity, alongside sport, alongside school and self-confidence. So that gap is exactly like we've been talking about, why creating intentional safe space matters, because when women and girls see themselves reflected in the support they receive, it doesn't just help them cope, it helps them feel believed, capable, and less alone. And I think the reason that 80% of autoimmune affects women, there's so many experts out there. I could just go on, and I don't want to drag on for you in this episode, but we suppress anger. We have all this internal inflammation because we've been conditioned that way in society. And so, I mean, for myself growing up, I will say there's a lot of childhood things that I definitely do think shaped my autoimmune disease. And can you prove that? No, I don't have the ability to prove that that's the case. But um, I definitely think like traumas and things that you go through have a factor into that. You likely would have a predisposition in your DNA, but there is something that kind of lights the match to the fire.
100%. And Alex, I fully agree with you. And I like to think that it's a like it's common knowledge, but it's obviously not. Like I'm a yoga teacher. Trauma is stored in the body. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that is real. And people will
Yep.
still say that that's woo-woo. And I think that
Yeah.
mentality is what's holding men back, women especially, like because it's actually what's real.
Completely agree. I just said the other day, I think it was a couple days ago, to a family member of something, things in the childhood having its impact, and you can develop these things. And they looked at me and went, "Well, I don't think that blah, blah, blah." And it's exactly what you just said. It's like, how could you say that though? Because think of all the stress on the nervous system. And I mean, and I could go on and on about this, but
Yeah.
it has an impact. And, you know, I think it's an unintelligent person would not take that into consideration when thinking about the factors that could have influenced the development of your diagnosis.
Yeah. I
Mhm.
totally agree. There's so many layers to it, and I think organizations like yours are finally bringing more light to the reality that
Yeah,
it can be a culmination of things, but the fact is that we repress a lot of things throughout our life, and that's going to show up in your body in different ways. And I think just what you're
exactly.
doing in general, advocating for women and girls who are experiencing this, bringing more attention to the fact that like women need more resources in the medical system. I think it's absolutely so valuable, and I like greatly respect what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you for your kind words.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this conversation's been awesome, Alex. I know we're coming up on time, and honestly, I'd love to have you back later in the year when you're when you're doing more things for Group of Grit, if you're open to it.
I would
But so
love
I just
to.
Yes, I want to have you back for sure. I have a couple more questions for you as we kind of wrap up. If someone is listening who is maybe newly diagnosed or feeling isolated or not understanding maybe what's going on in their body, what would you want them to know?
I would want them to know that they are definitely not the only one going through it, even though it feels that way. And that's not cliche. There is a space for you. This is why we're here. I just had a girl yesterday who has Hashimoto's and who messaged me. She's 19 and she said, "I had no idea this space existed." And so this is bridging that gap. This is really getting that reach and more eyes on Group of Grit to show and demonstrate that you're safe to be in this community. People understand you and you are welcome here, genuinely, no matter what kind of hardship you're going through.
I love it. For the namesake of the show, I always ask this question. You've changed careers, identities, sports, countries. What does changing the game mean to you at this point in your life?
Great question. Changing the game. Okay. It used to mean winning, validation, proving myself, earning a spot in the room. And it's not to say that now I'm not trying to do those things. I'm still trying to achieve, but now it means redefining what success looks like when the rules weren't built for women like us in the first place. So I've learned that reinvention is not failure and it's adaptability. And I feel like throughout my entire athletic career and just life in general, it's just constantly having to adapt because if you don't, you're going to get crushed. So changing country, sports, identities, it forced me to let go of who I thought I had to be and build something more honest and sustainable, not just for myself, but for these other women. So, with all that said, today, changing the game just means choosing longevity over burnout, impact over image, and creating space for others while still chasing excellence myself.
That is a mic drop moment. I We have to end the show on that. That was perfect. I have goosebumps. Alex,
Thanks.
Seriously, this has been such a wonderful conversation. I am very passionate about health in general as well. So I love hearing about your journey and what you're doing to truly change the game for women who are going through experiences like yours. So I really, really appreciate your time. Where can our listeners connect with you or find you?
Anyone can find Group of Grit on Instagram. Come join the fun, come join the party. And then our website is www.groupofgrit.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will catch you again, and I hope to have Alex back on the show.